And we're live. Welcome to the Critical Christian Podcast.
We're your hosts, Dan and Justin. I usually do the first.
I don't know what happened. We've been doing this for over a year. We still don't know how to do an intro.
I do the first part.
You do the first? All right,
Welcome
you do the first
to the
part.
Critical Christian Podcasts.
We're your host, Dan.
No. All
right, we'll try this from the top. All right, you go and then I'll go.
All right, don't talk until I point to you.
All right, welcome. Oh, you want? Okay, go ahead.
Welcome to the Critical Christian Podcasts. Podcast, not more than one.
Mm-hmm.
We're your host, Dan and
Justin. We ask critical questions about the Bible and provide questionable answers.
Nailed it.
We got it.
All right.
All right, next week we'll do it one time.
I believe that.
I imagine after about our third year, we'll figure out how to do the intro. You think?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we're getting good at this.
And then we'll rename the podcast.
So Dan, I think this week we're in Exodus 8, and I only know that because I already put it on the screen. And so we're now on the fourth plague, and the Egyptian magicians have been pretty dynamite so far, eh?
Oh yeah.
Can you turn your rod into a snake? Or turn water into blood, or
can I turn my rod into a snake?
I mean,
it's a good question.
I wasn't asking about your serpent.
Oh, no,
not yet.
No,
it's not a thing.
Not a thing.
Okay, so the Egyptian magicians have gotten pretty good at mimicking the magic, not the magic, but the things that the Lord is performing for the people and for Pharaoh.
I was actually watching a video the other day about snake charmer.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
It's the one you showed me.
It was a good one, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a comment on it?
That was it.
Awesome. While we're, just getting warmed up here, maybe you should move your mic so it's in front of your mouth.
It was at one point, wasn't it?
And then you move your chair.
Is that better? Is that better?
I think we're okay now.
All right.
Yeah. Fantastic. Wunderbar. So without further ado then, let's start getting into the other plagues in where the magicians aren't so good at replicating, and we can see where God he gets to show off, do the things.
He does the things.
You want to start us out with verse number 1 here?
Oh, yes. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go, so that they may serve me.'"
Mm-hmm.
I presume what God really said was go and tell Aaron to tell the Pharaoh.
Yeah, that's a good point because, okay, so far, what we know, because Moses has had the conversation twice, obviously not because of bad editing of the narrative, but he's had twice conversation with God where he's like, hey, listen, I don't talk so good. Word's not good. Mm-hmm. And Aaron is right in line, and God's like, fine, your brother, which everyone loves to hear it when they can't do something. They're like, well, we'll get your brother to do it. Mm-hmm. He's the good son. He can do the thing. So anyways, it sounds like you're right. Aaron is really the one doing it, but it's odd that it's like God is telling Moses to go do it, but we know Moses is not the spokesman.
Right. He's a delegator.
He's a delegator,
and God is a delegator too. So.
Sure. And obviously back to the point that you made last week, which is if Aaron is the one that's really doing all of the talking and the delegating, Moses really seems redundant here. Does he not?
I don't really know what he brings to the table.
So far, not much.
Right.
He doesn't really bring anything to the table until Aaron starts making idols. That's when Moses becomes important, right?
Well, we'll get into that because that's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, we are in Exodus. The idols are coming very soon.
Well, not very soon.
A couple chapters. Well, more than a couple chapters.
That's going to be at least 3 months.
It might be a while. We're going to get there one chapter at a time.
Oh.
Well, what's that though? Let's jump in. Let's do verses 2 and 3 here and see where we can go.
If you refuse to let them go, I will plague your whole country with frogs. The Nile shall swarm with frogs. They shall come up in your palace, into your bedchamber and your bed, into the houses of your officials and of your people, and into your ovens and your kneading bowls.
Wow!
So
Very nice.
I've got questions about the frog plague.
Uh-huh.
And here's the thing, right? Remember how the water was already turned to blood?
Yes, I do remember.
Right. So we get to verse 2, and he says, "The Nile shall swarm with frogs."
Yeah.
But how? It's all blood,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right. But it's also dead fish.
What follow me though, but are the frogs living in the blood water?
Well,
What are they doing there?
but they're not living in there.
Because as we will see,
Maybe.
a lot of these plagues kind of get like overturned. Like God undoes them. Like he's going to undo the frogs. He's going to undo the flies. He's going to undo the gnats. But he never undoes the blood water.
Oh.
So is the blood water still blood water?
Yeah, why wouldn't it be?
We would have to assume so. And if that's the case, how are the frogs living in it? Because, listen, the frogs need fresh water to survive.
How much water is in blood? I bet most of it's water.
Yeah, but I don't know if they can actually drink the water, the blood, and hydrate. Because they take in the moisture from the water, they absorb it through their skin. But if it were true that all the water was still blood, then how are the frogs absorbing the water molecules through their skin and staying hydrated?
Well, that's a good question. If only we had an all-knowing computer to ask.
You're gonna turn to Chat GTP, your true god?
That's very blasphemous. Don't talk anymore.
If Chat GTP doesn't know it. Okay, but it's a good point, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the water is still blood, how are the frogs living in it?
It says frogs can theoretically survive in a pool of blood.
Theoretically.
For a short time.
How long?
Well, let's find out. It says they can survive a few minutes to a couple hours. Wow.
Oh, you heard it here. Frogs can live in blood for up to a couple hours. Okay. So listen, that's all we need to know. Listen, it's a miracle anyways. Like theoretically the frogs materialized anyways, like out of nothingness.
I assume they came from other places because they're like, oh, look at all these dead fish. I'm going to get some of that.
Well, I don't think frogs eat dead fish.
It's just, no, now I already looked this one up.
Don't they eat like flies and gnats?
No. Hold on.
Do frogs eat dead fish?
Oh boy.
I don't buy any of this. I don't think frogs eat dead fish, my man.
Well, it doesn't matter what you think since ChatGPT is telling me right now. I mean, they could.
I suppose.
It says they might opportunistically consume dead fish. It's not a part of their diet. But I bet if that's the only thing they had, they'd eat it.
If it's rotted, it might be too late. Hard to say. Anyways, the long and short of it is, I'm just saying that to make this story work, I think it makes better sense to assume, rather than all these frogs coming out of the Nile, that they must have either migrated or materialized magically or supernaturally.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't make sense that they're all actually living in the Nile.
Sounds like you're living in denial.
I would not. I just don't think it makes sense that they would be living in the blood water.
They weren't living there. They were just coming in for the food and then probably going back to their non-blood area.
Where would that be? Because it says they came out of the Nile.
I'm sure that's not what it meant.
They just all happened to be in the Nile when Moses and Aaron went and called them out of it?
It was probably not instantaneous.
I'm just saying.
It was probably something that took, a while for all the frogs to go, hey, guy, there's some dead fish. Oh, really? Ribbit. And then they just tell the whole clan. And then they come on over and eat them.
Perhaps.
That's what I thought.
Perhaps. Either way, the way that the story is worded makes it appear as though like all the frogs are chilling out in the Nile, and then Moses and Aaron come up and they're like, they touched their tip to the water, to the blood, and and the frogs all come out.
I think my mouse is broken.
Your mouse? I don't think. Oh yeah, it's not working.
All right.
No, it's not broken.
So what I wanted to say was, isn't it interesting that frogs are appearing in people's ovens?
I don't know if that's interesting, but I think that does give a good explanation of how severe the plague of the frogs were.
Did people eat frogs back then?
No.
Did they?
I mean, if they were starving, they could have.
So basically, they opened up their oven and said, "Well, that's dinner."
I don't think so. It just says that the house is filled.
And then they were praising their God, saying, "Thank you."
No, I don't think so. I think it's saying that their houses were infiltrated by the frogs. Not that they were cooking the frogs. The frogs just happened to be so invasive that they made it into their ovens.
I guess I don't really know what an oven would be like back then. Maybe it didn't even have like a door or what have you.
It would have been much more like a mud brick oven. You know, like the outdoor pizza ovens. It wouldn't be like what we would envision today, where it would have like a door on it, and, like various trays. It'd be very rudimentary.
I bet it would be easier to get into a kneading bowl, though. You just hop into it.
Well, naturally. But anyways, it's interesting though that I'd be curious to know what type of frogs they were. Because if they were like big frogs, say like bullfrogs, that's different than like little toads. And like bullfrogs you can eat. You know what I mean? There's some meat there.
Yeah, but you said they don't eat frogs.
Well, they typically didn't unless they were starving. But I mean, this is an unprecedented
right.
scenario.
And if it's already in your oven,
well, that's what I'm saying.
Might as well just turn it on.
That's what I'm saying. If it's a bullfrog, yes, they might actually.
So some of them were probably like praising their gods.
I doubt that's what they were doing because they could have ate real food. I'm just suggesting
frogs
that
are real food. The French love them. All right.
But they eat raw meat.
Who does?
The French.
Okay, they eat raw.
Isn't that what pate is?
I have no idea.
Yeah, they've got a bunch of forms of raw meat that they eat. Just chat GTP that. Ask them what the French raw meat food is. There's like 2 or 3 of them. Apparently, like as long as you prepare it right, the raw meat won't hurt you.
Yeah, but that's because you gotta cool it down.
I don't know. Anyways, I don't think they were eating the frogs. Is what I'm saying.
No, that's how you do it with.
Remember, the plague is supposed to make them upset, not to feed them.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying some of them might have been like, oh, silver lining.
Suppose.
Silver lining.
There's this silver lining. Then they were upset when the frogs left, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, they probably got a bunch of them in bags and stuff.
They probably did save a few. Yeah. All right, well let's read verses 4 and 5. Let's keep moving through the passage here, and we'll.
Okay.
All right, verse 4 and 5.
The frogs shall come up on you and on your people and on all your officials. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, the canals, and the pools, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt.
See what I'm saying? It's like the frogs are living in the blood water, in the blood. Because they're in the rivers, the canals, the pools, so on and so forth. But it would be silly if all the water was still blood.
So were these like swimming pools they're talking about?
Oh yeah, they had pools.
People went swimming back then?
They weren't like they're not like backyard recreational pools.
Why not?
It'd be like a natural pool coming off of like the aqueduct.
Oh.
It would be communal.
And I bet that it was connected to the Nile, right?
Typically.
Well, that's not that impressive then.
Well, that's where the water came from.
I know, but if it was a man-made pool, it'd be more impressive that it turned to blood.
Well, they typically are man-made pools, but they get their water from the Nile. They channel it.
Well, yeah, but if they didn't channel it, then it would be more impressive. Because you go to your swimming pool and go, hey, how did this turn into blood?
Well, we read in the prior 2 chapters that they went and they turned all the water into blood.
That probably took a long time looking for all the pools.
I suspect they didn't go to every individual
knocking
pool.
on the door saying, hey, do you have a pool in your backyard?
I don't think that's how it worked.
You don't think?
I don't think they were hunting down people's bodies of water looking to turn it into blood.
Sounds like what they were doing.
I think it was more like they pointed at one pool and then all the pools.
Oh.
See what I'm saying?
I guess. Doesn't sound like that could really happen. But
could you imagine if God was like, in order for this to work, you have to go throughout the entire land of Egypt and turn every single piece of water into blood. Like, you have to physically go and find each one.
Why not?
That'd be exhausting.
Yeah, but it'd be impressive, wouldn't it? It would be like taking a glass pitcher out of their fridge, and Moses knocks on the door and says, "Boom."
You think they had refrigerators?
Oh, they had something, didn't I?
You think they had refrigerators?
I said they had something. They had like ice cubes that they stacked together.
Egypt had ice cubes.
Igloos, buddy. Igloos.
Igloos? Ancient Egypt had igloos.
Listen, I wasn't there any of the were you, so it's really hard to know for sure. All right, what's the next topic?
I think we can know for just about sure that they didn't have ice cubes in ancient Egypt.
Why do you say that?
Because how would they do it?
Take ice, wait for the nightfall.
But where would you get?
Where do you get water from? The Nile.
But ice, you need cold for.
Yeah, I think it gets pretty cold at night.
Not enough for ice.
Who knows?
I think we know.
Sure. That's
why, like, the Egyptians barely wore any clothes because it was so dang hot.
Well, if that's what you think, then
I don't think they had ice until like the 18th century.
Yeah, who knows? All right.
Anyway.
What's next?
Right. Yeah, we were on verse 4 and 5. The frogs came up out of all of the waterways.
Yeah.
And now we're on 6 and 7.
I like how the Lord said to Moses, "Say to Aaron," like they're not even pretending now.
The charade is over. Moses is not doing anything.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, Moses, go tell Aaron, because you can't do the thing. Since you're useless, Moses, we go tell your brother to do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine how embarrassing that would be? Always living in your older brother's shadow like that.
Was Aaron older than Moses?
Actually, yeah, Aaron was 3 years older than Moses, but it would be the other way around. Obviously, Aaron would have been living in Moses' shadow since he was theoretically, in the royal palace.
Mm-hmm.
But what a turn of tables. Went from Moses being the quote unquote Prince of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
To now Aaron in charge. Aaron probably digging this. My brother thought he was pretty damn hot when he was a Prince of Egypt, but
right.
Look who's got a tight tongue.
Yeah.
You had some notes on 6 and 7, eh? Wait, did we already read this?
Do 6, so
yeah, let's read 6 and 7.
All right. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same by their secret arts and brought frogs up on the land of Egypt. So, I don't know how they would do that. Did they just like stuff some frogs in their robes and go, ta-da?
See, this is where, like, remember the earlier tricks, like the silly tricks, like turning the staff into a snake and whatnot? You can kind of see where they might be able to mimic that, but this is the one trick where it's like, that's pretty damn impressive. I mean, it's not as impressive as the guys who always have like doves coming out of everywhere. You see the magic shows and there's like, here's a dove, there's a dove.
You know what? Now that you say that, and we've seen that happen.
And we've watched it, yeah.
There's no reason they couldn't do that with frogs. I'm not joking.
Well,
correct?
But doves are really docile. Like, you can just put them in your pocket and they'll just chill there. That's why they always pick doves. But, like, frogs lose their mind. You can't just shove a bunch of them into your pocket.
I bet there's a docile type of frog, right?
I don't know. I do know that if in fact the Egyptian magicians were able to, like, replicate the frog thing, I could only assume it was by trickery. Like, they already had a collection of frogs and they, like, put them in the right position so that when they, reached out their staff, then the frogs would come out and then everyone would cheer and be like, oh, yay, the frogs. But this is one of those tricks where I think it just this one has to require deception.
Well, I'm not sure if it does, and I'll tell you why.
All right, tell me why.
Well, so the Pharaoh's heart is still hardened, right? So it doesn't actually matter what the magicians did, right? Because the Pharaoh would still be unconvinced. So maybe part of hardening his heart was the Pharaoh going, yeah, sure, that's believable,
Sure.
Because we don't know what hardening really means. Maybe it meant making him a complete idiot. I don't know.
What if God helped him
Help the Egyptian magicians?
to mimic the things? What if God
Oh.
helped? Yeah, well, what if God was helping the Egyptian magicians to mimic the tricks in order to harden Pharaoh's heart? Because God said he was going to harden his heart. Part of this is God's fault.
Well, you know what? I'd prefer that. You know why? Because then it's still at least the Pharaoh's decision.
It works. That does work, doesn't it?
Yeah, because God isn't actually, hardening his heart. He's just putting things out there, and the Pharaoh can decide whether he believes it or not.
He's not as much dictating his free will as much as manipulating his free will.
Yeah, which is better, not best. But
I don't know if either of it's better. I remember all this was planned from the beginning. Joseph was sent ahead of his brothers into Egypt to prepare the way for them by God's doing.
Mhm.
God told Abraham way back in Genesis 15 that his ancestors would spend 400 years in Egypt because the sins of the Amorites are not yet completed. And so it's hard to get away from the fact that God really is kind of pulling a lot of strings here.
yeah,
Like he seems okay with that.
who does?
Well, God seems okay with orchestrating things. Don't worry about the comments.
I'm allowed to read them.
I know. Listen, internet comments are never good.
They're all right.
You had some notes here though on
Did
verses
I?
6. I mean, you get a whole paragraph of
Oh,
notes.
then I better read some.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what's in your notes
All right.
about the frogs. Obviously.
Yes. So in the New Testament, they mention that the Sadducees, or whatever, were accusing Jesus of being in cahoots with Satan for being able to do all those miracles.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd think maybe they would mention, or there would be a mention of this. However, if that were the case,
That's a good point. So it says that they're able to do the tricks through their secret arts.
yeah.
Something funny on your brain?
No.
You okay there?
Yeah.
Well, now you have to say it.
This guy says, "God, this is boring."
Well, yeah, that's why he left.
Yeah,
That's why I told you not to read the
it's
comments.
still funny.
No one cares what's in the
It's
comments.
still funny.
Listen, the comments are always brutal.
Still funny.
Gotta do the thing.
Still funny. All right.
All right. On the actual topic.
Yeah.
On the actual topic, it says that they're able to do the tricks using their dark arts.
Yeah, which could very easily come from Satan.
So I looked into that, and the Hebrew word that's used there is very similar to the word we say Kippur, like Yom Kippur, referring to the festival of the scapegoat and from Leviticus 16 and whatnot, the day of covering. But the root word there, Kippur, is kafar in Hebrew, and it's really interesting because the dark arts that are described here come from the same root word as kafar, means something that is like covered. So it almost is like they're saying that they're using some sort of secret arts.
So just sleight of hand.
Yes, exactly. It could be that it's more trickery than actual magic.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If that makes sense.
What do they say in the New Testament then? Because they definitely say that Jesus is getting his miracles from Satan, right?
This is from the power of Beelzebub.
So they spell it out.
Yeah, they just say, yeah, he's casting out demons in the name of the devil, basically.
Okay.
Whereas here, they're like, no, it's secret arts. We got to remember, during the Moses era, there was no idea of Satan. Satan didn't exist. That idea didn't come around until the Persian period.
I mean, he was in Genesis, right?
1,000 years. Well, no, it doesn't say that Satan was the snake in Genesis.
Well, somebody was the snake.
Well, how do you know that? Why wouldn't it just be a talking snake?
Because that's ridiculous. We know that snakes don't talk.
Well, they did in Genesis. And it was cursed to lose its legs. Do you think Satan crawls around on its belly?
Oh, I don't know what he does.
Certainly not. But it says that cursed are you among all the wild animals and the beasts of the field. Literally just an animal. It's a snake. It's an explanation for why snakes crawl on their belly.
A lot of things crawl on their belly.
Animals?
I think.
Like what? Can you name a single one other than snakes?
So, what are we doing here?
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, we're reading. We were reading 6 and 7. We cannot stay on task. All right, we're reading 6 and 7, and you had a paragraph of notes.
I read it.
You read part of it.
No, I read all of it.
You read all of it?
I just write a lot.
Fair enough. You're wordy.
Yeah.
Well, let's read the next section. Let's do verse 8, and then after that we'll do verse 9.
All right. Then Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron and said, "Pray to the Lord to take away the frogs from me and my people, and I will let the people go to sacrifice to the Lord."
So he's softening.
He is.
Maybe. I mean,
or maybe the magicians just weren't that believable this time.
Or maybe having your entire kingdom overrun with frogs is like not fun.
It's worse than having blood for water.
How many wives do you think Pharaoh had? How many like concubines?
Like 1,000.
Yeah. How many women and children were in his household that were like, you better figure this thing out, or there's going to be hell to pay.
Like, we're getting tired of eating frogs for every meal. That's what I think they would do, is eat them.
Well, I mean, theoretically, like the frogs, as far as I could tell, would probably wreak havoc on their actual food supply.
Yeah.
Right? So even if they weren't eating the frogs would become a problem long enough because frogs would be harming their actual food supply. In fact, if it made it into their ovens, then it's probably in their storehouses as well. And if there's frogs in the storehouses, I mean, even if it's just like a pile of frogs pooping and peeing in there, it's a problem.
Frogs are gross.
Frogs are gross. You can't have a, slew of frogs in your grain storage.
I guess that's true, isn't it? Oh, well.
Verse 9, 10?
Yeah, Moses said to Pharaoh, "Kindly tell me when I am to pray for you and for your officials and for your people, that the frogs may be removed from you and your houses and be left only in the Nile." And he said, "Tomorrow." Why would Moses even ask this? Hey, Moses, there's frogs everywhere. How about right now? Is right now good for you to pray?
Isn't that a weird question? Well, there's two weird things here. Not just that Moses is like, hey, when did you want this thing to be fixed?
Right.
An intelligent person would think,
now.
Right now. Right now. And then the more confusing thing is that Pharaoh doesn't say right now. He says tomorrow.
Yeah. Which almost makes it seem like what Moses said made sense. Because the Pharaoh was like, "Oh yeah, I gotta think. I gotta move some things around. Tomorrow's probably the earliest."
Let me check my schedule. There's a frog fry at 7 tonight, so that's on the calendar already. I already sent the invites out. We can't move that.
Yeah, we gotta have the frogs still. You can't get rid of them.
Right. Have you had frog legs? They're amazing.
No.
Oh, they're so good.
I only eat things like that aren't
like
that.
Little chicken nuggets.
Yeah, but they're green.
You don't eat this.
No, stop talking now.
I mean, you could.
Stop talking now.
I don't.
Do we have a good
Just saying.
soundboard for that one?
For what?
For something gross.
We don't have a gross sound.
How about this?
Like the Flintstones
running away from the frogs.
That's something.
You picked these sounds. I didn't.
I didn't pick them for this thing.
Well, you picked them for something.
We'll add more sounds to the soundboard just for you.
Okay.
I promise.
All right.
All right, let's read the next section. This is a bigger section. This is verse 11 through 15.
Yeah. Also 10, because I didn't finish 10.
You didn't finish 10?
No, I stopped after, and he said tomorrow.
What a slacker.
Moses said, "As you say, so that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs shall leave you in your houses, and your officials and your people. They shall be left only in the Nile." Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to the Lord concerning the frogs that he had brought upon Pharaoh. And the Lord did as Moses requested. The frogs died in the houses, the courtyards, and the fields, and they gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was a respite, he hardened his heart and would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said.
Dun, dun, dun.
Pharaoh's like, well, that sucked, but I'm pretty sure that's the last we've heard of this God fellow.
Yeah.
That's what he thought.
Well, he thought, well, the worst is finally behind us. But this does lead me back to the same question we had before. If the water was still blood, the story has a hard time making sense. Because he still hasn't asked for the water to be turned back to water yet. And if that were the case, he would still be like, hey, everything's like right now he's like, okay, you took the frogs away, everything's cool. I'm going to go back to not caring. But if the water was all still blood throughout the land, he would still be like in a state of panic.
Right.
So
exactly.
It might be, and this is a suggestion, it might be that at some point the water was turned back from blood to water.
Yeah.
At some point, and the narrative just didn't tell us.
It's probably just assumed. I mean, if you're going from one plague to the next, you're probably going to finish the first one, right?
Right, and so many of the plagues did get reversed,
Yeah.
So it's possible that the story was either like shortened or condensed, and like the people living there do have something to drink. Because remember, if all the water is still blood, the Israelites don't have anything to drink either.
But I mean, we saw that they were able to dig little holes near the Nile and drink that.
True, they did dig for water,
even though that was coming right from the Nile itself, right?
Right. Which brings up another good point. The narrative didn't explicitly tell us that when they dug for water below the Nile, that they found it.
Well, they drank something.
It didn't say that they found clean water, though. It says they dug there looking for clean water.
Well, why would they even bother writing that?
So it's certainly possible that even though they were digging there for water, they didn't really find anything that was helpful.
I think they may have mentioned that they found water.
I don't actually believe that to be a case. In fact, we can go back to the very last verse of chapter 7.
All right.
And pull it up, because I don't think it explicitly says they actually found the water. It says they dug looking for the water. So it says, and all the Egyptians had to dig along the Nile for water to drink, for they could not drink the water of the river. So it does say they were digging for the water. It doesn't necessarily say that the clean water was found.
Can we get a different translation?
Why?
Because I don't like that one.
You don't like a good one?
It's very likely that it says something like, and they found the water.
You think the translators of this just cut that part out?
Well, which version is this?
The NRSV?
Are there other versions, like the Message we can look at?
Well, the Message is trash. You already know that.
I'm just saying, if the Message said something different, then we'd have something to go on.
Well, the Message is garbage, though.
Oh, fine. I'll pull up my own Bible.
I don't see why you keep reading that thing. So it says they dug along the Nile for water to drink, for they could not. And it says 7 days passed after the Lord had struck the Nile, which is a weird phrase. Why does the 7 days matter right there?
Well, I mean, I guess you would have to assume that means that it's been bloody the whole time, right?
I think it's supposed to be connected with verse 8:1. It should say 7 days passed after the Lord struck the Nile. Then the Lord said to Moses.
Oh.
But
so we assume that between 24 and 25, it got turned back to regular water.
Well, see, there were 7 days between the water turning to blood and between God telling Moses about the plague of the frogs. So if it were true that all of the water was turned to blood,
they would all be dead.
7 days later, I mean, these people are all dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think in order for the story to be coherent, you have to assume that the plague of the blood operated like the other plagues, and that it did eventually get turned back into water.
Yeah.
Or either that, or they were just really successful at digging for fresh water. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems unlikely that God would be so. He would like accidentally forget turn some of the water into blood. He turned all of the water into blood, even the water in their cooking pots, and he just accidentally forgot some of the water below the Nile.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean, it's possible God was trying to teach them a lesson, not kill them all. So he did leave some untouched.
Well, I mean, as we're gonna find out, he doesn't have a problem with killing the Egyptians. He doesn't have a problem at all with killing the Egyptians. That ain't no problem.
I know.
All right. Well, let's. Are you still goofing with the message? I don't know why you do that. You know it's not a translation of the Bible.
This app, I don't know how
the
to
message
use it.
is not a Bible translation.
I never said it was.
I don't know why you care what's in it.
It's easier for my tiny brain to understand.
All right. Well, let's read verse 16 and 17.
Fine.
And then we'll keep on rolling here.
Then the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth so that I may become gnats throughout the whole land of Egypt. And they did so. Aaron stretched out his hand and his staff and struck the dirt of the earth, and gnats came on humans and animals alike. All the dust of the earth turned into gnats throughout the whole land of Egypt. So I think this is an exaggeration because there's a lot of dust on earth.
Yeah, it's definitely hyperbole.
Even if it was just in Egypt, I bet there was still a lot.
Oh, a ton.
Well, let's find out how much it is then.
How much what is?
How much dust was on Egypt?
How many dust particles exist in the entire country of Egypt?
Yes.
Obviously, nobody has that number. That would be ridiculous.
Are you sure about that? Because I got a number right here.
I mean, you can guesstimate it. Let's hear the number.
There were approximately 10 quadrillion individual grains of dust.
Only you would want to look that up.
The computer seemed happy to do it too.
All right.
So, since the beginning of time, there have only existed 800 trillion gnats, which is far, far shorter than 10 quadrillion. Also, 10 quadrillion gnats all concentrated in Egypt would make it so you couldn't breathe without sucking gnats into your lungs.
How many zeros are in a quadrillion?
I looked up that sucking gnats into your lungs thing. I didn't just make it up. Because I was like, that's a lot of gnats. Could you even breathe the air, you know?
Right. Okay, so this is, oh my gosh. It's
15.
There are 15 zeros in quadrillion. I can't even fathom how many gnats that would have been. You wouldn't have, like you said already, you wouldn't have been able to even breathe.
Mm-hmm. You'd breathe the gnats in.
I mean, I know it's too late for this because we already started the podcast, but now I'd like to actually do like a square foot assessment of breathing space within the country of Egypt and see like how many gnats were per square foot of headspace. What if it turned out that there was like 500 gnats, per whatever 10 square foot of headspace?
Mm-hmm.
You would legitimately just be breathing in gnats.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a lot of gnats.
It is.
I think we have to assume, obviously, that this is hyperbole.
Yes.
And not that the little atmosphere turned to gnats.
But it's fun to see what would happen if it wasn't.
It is a little bit fun to, when you take serious the hyperbole.
Yeah.
Just to see how far you can stretch reality.
There are people that, let me say this again. There are people that believe everything in the Bible, right?
Oh, for sure.
Do these people understand this as hyperbole?
I think they would be willing to accept some things as hyperbole because, like, the passage where Jesus says it's better, if your arm causes you to sin, it's better to cut your arm off, and
right,
rather than your whole body be thrown into. I think they understand that is like a hyperbolic statement. So, but typically, like the super, like literalists,
mm-hmm.
they're very reluctant to concede when things are hyperbolic.
Right,
It has to be
yeah.
like the most absurd scenario.
This is pretty absurd, right?
Yeah, it's pretty absurd to think that
Do you have any books from people like this who talk about the plagues?
Yeah, I mean, I've got 2 commentaries behind me by Eugene Carpenter. In fact, you would like him. He's a biblical literalist. Or inerrantist, sorry, not a literalist. He's an inerrantist.
I like it because it's so funny.
I mean, you can grab the book behind you, and if you want to see what he says.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, he's going to tell you it's hyperbolic language.
Hold on. All right.
What?
I gotta get this. Hold on.
What are you doing?
I'm gonna do this.
What? Oh.
Much time.
No, it's a short elevator pitch. Okay, so we're in Exodus 8 then, and we'll grab. And remember, this is a conservative, biblical inerrantist writing this, so he's going to tell you what would be like the mainstream conservative position, and he's going to say on this particular plague, we're in chapter 8, verse 16 and 17. Almost there. Good old Eugene Carpenter, peace be upon him. I miss the guy.
Is he dead?
Yeah, he passed away in an unfortunate fly fishing incident. He was fly fishing on vacation, slipped on a rock and bumped his head, and lights out. Terrible, terrible situation. He was only like 61 or 62.
Huh.
Way too young for that. So anyways, let's see what he says, though. He's got some notes on the translation on verse 16. Let's see. Oh, he's going by the Hebrew verse numbers, though, so we've got to backtrack a little bit. All right, we don't care about the translation notes. Let's go to the commentary. On verse 17, it says, "The intensity of the plagues is emphasized. Not only the air will be invaded, but also the ground. Where they are standing, where they are is where Yahweh will make the distinction." This last phrase serves to highlight this plague to its basic structure and propel the reader's mind back to the statement Yahweh made to Moses, where he was standing on holy ground, Exodus 3:5. This is 8:17. No, I see what he's done here. 8:17 is the Hebrew verse, and he's referring to actually 8:21. 8:16 in the English, that note is here. I apologize. This is what he says. Oh, this is really interesting. He says, "The translation of gnats is difficult, but this term suffices to convey the theological and historical intent of the passage, if not entomological accuracy. The command to Moses and Aaron, followed immediately by the execution of the wonder by Yahweh, moves the action quickly. There were gnats everywhere. The dust was full of them. This plague comes quickly on the heels of the preceding one. No warning is given and no time is set. This is the pattern of the third plague in each triad of plagues. The strategy, however, has no evident effect on Pharaoh." So he seems to indicate that it's not quite literal, that there were, 10 quadrillion gnats, but there were a lot of them.
Yes.
There were many gnats, I guess is what we've learned here.
I don't know. It's just interesting when they call them an arrogance and arrogantist, but then even they kind of give
Well,
and
certainly
take.
you understand hyperbole.
I understand it.
You can be an inerrantist and understand that certain phrases are hyperbolic.
Oh,
You don't think so?
I just said I guess.
All right, let's keep reading.
Let's do it.
This
Think we
is
can get
18
chapter
and,
9?
18 and 19? I don't think so.
Then I'm gonna just talk real slowly.
All right, go ahead. But we're not even close to chapter 9 yet. I don't know why you're worried about chapter 9.
I mean, we're almost done with this chapter.
We got another plague left.
Oh, one whole plague.
We got to do the flies. Do not sleep on the flies.
Flies are like gnats, just
Don't.
bigger.
They're worse. They're like gnats, but worse.
I mean, yes, but not that much worse.
All right. Let's read 18 and 19.
The magicians tried to produce gnats by their sacred arts, but they could not.
Naturally.
There were gnats on both humans and animals, and the magicians said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God."
The middle finger of God. For sure, the middle finger of God.
But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting?
No.
So the magicians could produce frogs, but they couldn't throw down a piece of fruit or something. They ta-da!
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, listen, they just had all these buckets of frogs, and they were. But how can they not figure out how to reproduce gnats? Because like, legitimately, all you need is a couple pieces of old fruit, and they're there in seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And once they're there, they lay. They're like rabbits. They're the rabbits of the flying world. As soon as they find food, they're laying eggs everywhere. Which is why even if like you think you've killed them, a day and a half later, you've got 1 million more of them.
Yeah, and this is the one where they say, "Up, too much."
How could they have not?
Can't do it. Can't do it.
I produced the plague of gnats last time I went on vacation and left some food out. Not hard. Anyone can do it.
You didn't know you were,
And no dark arts needed.
You were doing a miracle. You didn't know it.
I did. I was invoking the arm of Yahweh.
Whoa.
And plaguing my home with gnats.
Don't do that.
Anyways, let's read. Let's move on to our last plague for the day.
Nope. I have stuff.
Oh, you've got more.
Yeah.
I certainly would love to hear
it brings us to the question of how the gnats were even formed. So my guess is that each of these miracles just build upon each other, right? So bloody water kills fish, which brings frogs to eat the dead fish.
Oh, it's a cascade.
Yeah, cascade.
Okay.
And then the fish were probably diseased, and so this kills the frogs. And the gnats come to eat the dead frogs. Then the flies come to eat the gnats.
Flies eat gnats?
I mean, they're bigger than gnats. Why would things usually eat things smaller than them, right?
You sure about that?
No, but that was certainly my guess.
I'm not sure flies do eat gnats.
Well, I think they might.
Well, now we got to check. I'm gonna chat GTP it.
Okay.
All right. Do flies eat gnats? Flies generally do not eat gnats, as they tend to have different diets. Most flies, like houseflies, feed on decaying matter, which is what you said. But, I mean, it could be true that both the flies and the gnats came for the decayed, dead aquatic animals.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. First the gnats, and then the flies got wind of it.
Right, yeah. Oh, that was good. Yeah.
Thanks.
If, in fact, you're sticking to, like, the cascading natural hypothesis,
then
yeah, that could be possible. But God had to hold them off so that they came in the proper order, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still some miraculous stuff happening.
Well, I mean, as I just said, maybe word took a little bit to get to them.
Is God the fly whisperer?
He might be.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not.
Fair enough.
You know?
Fair enough.
I just like to think it, and I already told you this, I like to figure out how this could have happened non-supernaturally. And that's because it makes it more impressive.
See, and that, again, I disagree. I think it's more impressive when it's just a flat-out miracle, when we can just look at it and be like, God's a badass. He just did the thing nobody else could do because he's God.
I don't want to hand wave things away.
Why?
Because it's not impressive.
But if it's something that can just happen naturally, then you're just negating the need for God.
No, he's working within the laws of the universe.
Yeah, but I could do that. I can work within the laws of the universe.
Okay,
That's not special.
Go ahead and turn Lake Erie into blood then.
That's what I'm saying.
You can't.
I know, because I'm not God, so why are you trying to take God's power from him?
No, I'm saying that he used the universe he created. You know, I just think it's more impressive. Okay, so shut up.
You can have it.
Yeah, and I already told you I thought the bloody water was probably just a bunch of bears.
I can't believe I will listen. I will never forget your very hypothesis. Listen, I'm gonna clip last week's episode
Mm-hmm.
and just anyone watching right now, if you didn't watch last week, Dan has an amazing theory on how the water turned red, and it's not that God did a miracle. It's that he drew a great wind from across the world and collected all of the world's red berries and took them to the waters of Egypt, and the red berries turned the. It's wild.
That's not that weird.
I can't.
Not that weird.
That's insane. It would just make more sense if God just did. He just turned the water into blood, the same way Jesus turned water into wine.
I mean, I don't think so, but
All
whatever.
right. Anyways, let's we're not going to rehash last week's episode. We talked that horse to death already.
Yeah.
All right, so let's read verse 20 then.
Maybe next week I'll come more prepared.
Sure, yeah.
Like with some actual facts.
Some charts and graphs.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I'm down with charts and graphs.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Because a lot of the red ones were probably poisonous, which is what killed the fish. All right, let's see. Where
I know you're still building on that hypothesis.
Yeah. This is going to be my doctoral thesis.
And die on this hill, aren't you?
Maybe.
All right.
Go get a hill.
You can
All right.
have it. You can have the hill.
Thanks. Well, we better talk about the flies.
I mean, that's what's happening in this verse, so let's do it.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Rise early in the morning and present yourself before Pharaoh as he goes out to the water, and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, that my people go so that you may serve me.'"
You think he said it like that?
Hopefully.
As he's walking away, Pharaoh just hears him going, "Me." And he's like, "What's wrong with that guy?"
He probably looks at Aaron and says, "What was that about?"
That's right. Okay, all right, hold on. Okay, so then the Lord said to Moses, "Rise early in the morning and present." So again, it keeps reading. It's so hard to remember that Moses is not doing any of this. None of this is happening. This is all Aaron. But the way it's written, God keeps telling Moses to do the thing. But Moses isn't doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry. My brain. It's so hard for my brain to not get sucked into the narrative of Moses being the lead good guy.
Right.
Right?
Just
But he's the side piece right now. He's a sidekick. He's not a side piece.
he's the side piece. That's great.
He's a sidekick, I mean.
Uh-huh.
Moses is not Aaron's side piece. That's insane.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
God would have smote them so fast.
Mm.
All right. Verse 21.
Let's see. Because if you will not let my people go, I will send swarms of flies on you, your officials and your people, and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians shall be filled with swarms of flies, as will the land where they live. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen where my people live, so that no swarms of flies shall be there, that you may know that I, the Lord, am in this land. So
Really read it with gusto.
what do you want from me?
Trying to lull the audience to sleep.
So here's my thing to say about that.
Right.
That is very nice of God to not also punish the Jews.
Well, I mean, it'd be terrible if you did, wouldn't it?
Well, so then my question becomes, up until now, were the Jews suffering from all those plagues?
That's what I'm saying. Like the water turning blood seems that way.
You know, I had a teacher in middle school who would just punish everyone, even though only a handful of students were bad.
That's the worst.
He sucked.
Yeah, no one likes that.
No.
Nobody should be punished collectively for one person
Yeah.
sin, which I know how instinctive that feels, which makes Exodus so difficult because all of the Egyptians are being punished here.
Yep.
And it's hard for me to believe that all of the Egyptians, even the children, deserve this.
I'm sure there were a lot of Egyptians. I mean, the Jews and the Egyptians lived amongst right?
It seemed that
It
way.
wasn't like they were.
Slightly.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, there were some friendships made.
Imagine Egyptian friends.
Was there any intermarrying?
Oh, for sure there were.
Okay, well then I
Well,
don't.
hell, Joseph's wife was Egyptian. Remember?
Well then it seems a little
Was it Potiphora or whatever?
maybe.
Because his owner was Potiphar,
Yeah.
and his Egyptian wife had a name nearly identical to his,
I tell
or
you.
was it her father? I forget. All I remember was
So it just seems unlikely that this is one of those Sodom and Gomorrah things where every single person is evil.
But do you think that's the case?
No, I'm saying it's not the case.
Can't be the case.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Then it would be wrong to let them live.
Wait, what?
Well, I mean, if they're all wicked,
No, I'm saying they're not.
I know,
Okay.
but that's why we know it, because if they were all wicked, God is only killing some of them, then it wouldn't make sense. His responsibility to kill all of them. They're all wicked. Why do you let only some of the wicked survive? And very weird and select. But the inverse isn't any better. If they're all good, then why are you killing any of them? Especially because remember, some of them are babies. Like they're dead babies on God's hands.
Well, there are a lot, yeah.
I know what people say, but like, it's okay because the baby's in heaven now, you know. But if that's the case, then stop telling me that you're pro-life.
Yeah, right.
If you think it's okay to execute babies simply because they get a golden ticket to heaven, then stop getting up in women's wombs because they're having abortions. They're giving the baby a free ticket to heaven.
Yeah.
You gotta pick a side and stay on it.
I mean, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Christians are generally hypocrites.
But you're one of them.
But no. I said generally.
Oh, you're not one.
No, that's why I said generally.
So, well, how do you know which ones are?
Well, you gotta ask them.
I don't think they're that hypocritical. I just don't think they've thought through a lot of their positions politically.
So Christians are just dumb.
They're not dumb. I just think people like easy answers, and the system is designed to provide easy answers. They don't that's the whole thing. That's why we're doing this podcast, is to ask the difficult question, because no one's doing it. They aren't doing it in church,
right?
Like sometimes you might go to a Bible study. They'll delve deep into some of the odysseys, the deeper issues, but like your typical churchgoer isn't like asking difficult questions like, how is God still righteous when he's Exodus 34:7, when he says he punishes the children for the sins of the father into the third and fourth generation. Well, that doesn't seem right.
Right.
You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
And like those types of questions aren't being asked within the church. And so like people aren't thinking about it.
I could believe these people when they say they read the Bible. They just don't understand it.
Sure.
Well,
there's a lot there.
Yeah. I'm sure they don't read, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers.
They're definitely not reading Leviticus.
I mean, there's a whole lot of them that they don't read.
But they should. There's some wild stuff in the Torah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you think the Torah is wild, wait till you read the Talmud. Holy crap. There's some stuff in the Talmud make your head spin.
Cool. What's the Talmud?
The Talmud is the collection of Jewish writings that contain like the oral law.
Oh, basically,
among other things,
stuff that is not has no purpose whatsoever.
It would be like the Jewish teachings.
Yeah, but I mean,
not the biblical teaching.
Right. If it's not from God or the prophets or Jesus or what have you, it's just that from flawed human beings, then there's no real reason,
But they believed it was from God. Well, that's another story. Let's not get caught up on the Talmud.
Why?
Because we'll spend the rest of the night talking about it. Just go home tonight. I'll send you a link. Read Pirkei Avot. It's a tractate within the Talmud that explains why the Talmud exists and why there's an additional set of laws.
Is it shorter than a page?
You can read it in 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
I'm just saying that's probably 30 or 40 for me. But
you have an English degree. Can't read a tractate?
They don't teach you how to read fast.
Right.
Do they just read you how to understand what you're reading?
Well, I mean, that's subjective. Clean something different. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's read 23 and 24. Is that where we're at?
Maybe.
What did we just?
Yeah, 21 and 22.
That's what I thought. So I think we're on 23 and 24. Very good. I know it's going to be like 8:30 when we. I mean, I'm gonna like take my dog for a walk and clean up and get to bed.
What am I supposed to do?
I don't know. I work half a day a week. Huh?
Okay. All right.
Someone needs to pay your wife for putting.
We're gonna edit that one out. That's for sure.
I mean, your best.
All right, don't talk anymore. Don't talk anymore. All right.
Hashtag pray for Dan's wife.
All right. I'm gonna let's just do this. 23.
Your marriage is proof that God is merciful.
All right.
I love you, Valerie.
All right. Number 23.
Yep, 23 and 24.
Thus I will make a distinction between my people and
Wait.
you.
Oh, D there.
It says in like brackets D.
No, it's for a footnote.
Well, I don't know.
You copied the footnote text into the.
Well, it could have been like it already happened, so I didn't know.
I understand why you would think that.
Thus I will make a distinction between my people and your people. Whoa. This sign shall appear tomorrow, bright and early.
Mm-hmm.
So get some rest. The Lord did so, and great swarms of flies came into the house of Pharaoh and into his officials' houses. In all of Egypt, the land was ruined because of the flies. I'm trying to be a little more emotive.
That was emphatic.
Oh, thank you. Pretty, yeah. So the land was okay after the blood, the frogs, and the gnats, but it's the flies that really did it. After that, resale value is just almost non-existent.
Oh, the market fell through the floor.
You took my joke. That's not nice.
Oh, what?
That was my joke. I was going to say that.
I wasn't reading your notes.
What, you just came up with that yourself?
Great minds think alike.
Okay, fine. So
it makes me worried that I'm thinking like.
Hey, we should probably do something similar over here, huh? Over here.
Oh, we can bring the housing market down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you need some dark arts, maybe, or
just a bunch of rotten fruit.
You need Aaron's magic rod.
I got my own magic rod.
Oh, boy. Oh. Hashtag pray for Val.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that was it. I don't have anything else to say, I think.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah, that was it.
I thought you had something profound.
No. A lot of these I just like to make little jokes.
Fair enough.
Do you have anything?
Well, not really, but I found it intriguing that it says all of Egypt, the land was ruined, and it makes it like, what do you mean the land was ruined? Like, what are the flies themselves doing that would ruin the land that the gnats and the frogs didn't already ruin? You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's what I was saying. It's the flies that just pushed him over. Tipped him over. He's like, all right, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
Get in my hair.
Let's read verse 25. This is a really interesting verse.
Okay. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, go, sacrifice to your God within the land. So after all this, the Pharaoh's like, fine, you may sacrifice stuff, but I got to be able to see you.
Not too far away.
Or maybe Pharaoh assumed that if the Jews were sacrificing in Egypt, that God would have to let up on the fly. Right?
Well, my thought here is that Pharaoh's like, I don't want these people to go free. I need my labor,
Yeah.
right? So he's like, listen, you can go serve your god, but like too far away.
How many people do you think have died from the plagues, like right now, or by now, like the Egyptians?
I don't know how many people would have died from the plagues, but there has to be a certain number of dead people, and like the logistics of these passages is what makes some of them difficult. Like, so for example, it says that they can go and sacrifice within the land.
Yeah.
Remember, there are 2.5 million of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how are 2.5 million people just going to go on like a 3-day journey, to the edge of the land? To it's just weird. In fact, let's read the 26 through 28 because what I have to say really applies to that as well.
How come they can't sacrifice in Goshen where they live?
But that's why we're about to read it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the explanation is in the next couple verses. It tells you why.
Sorry, that was a spoiler.
Sorry, yeah.
All right. But Moses said it would not be right to do so, for the sacrifices that we offer to the Lord our God are offensive to the Egyptians.
Odious.
If we offer in the sight of the Egyptians sacrifices that are offensive to them, will they not stone us? We must go a 3 days journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he commands us. So Pharaoh said, I will let you go to sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, provided you do not go very far away. Now, please pray for me. So he said, pray for me. So it seems like the Pharaoh really does seem contrite. It's too bad that God doesn't care.
Yeah, it definitely
And will
seems like
harden
Pharaoh's
his
softening.
heart again. You know?
Yeah,
Right?
Pharaoh's heart here appears to be softened, whether
But
it's
it doesn't matter.
through force or not.
God's like, I don't care. I ain't done. You may be done, but I ain't done.
Oh yeah, I got to do all the plagues.
Yeah.
Hey, we just started.
Yeah, I don't care if you got to change your heart. I'm changing it back.
You wanted to do it, Pharaoh. We're gonna do all of it.
Yeah.
You wanted to smoke, young man. You're gonna smoke the whole carton until you make yourself sick. Happened.
And yet he gets to live, and I bet a lot of other people die.
Yeah, yeah. It's mostly Pharaoh's people that get punished, really, in the long run.
But not Pharaoh. He's still cool.
I mean, the villains always find a way to get away and live another day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Always collateral damage. But listen to what we have here, okay? It says, it would not be right for us to do so, to sacrifice within the land, for the sacrifices that we offer to the Lord our God are offensive to the Egyptians. If we offer in the sight of the Egyptians, they will stone us. Will they not stone us? That's preposterous. Listen, we already learned up to now that the population of the Israelites was roughly the same, if not more, than the population of the Egyptians, which is why they chose to enslave them so that they wouldn't overpower them. So if that's the case, if there are 2.5 million of these Egyptians, about 2 million Egyptians, we'll say, and 2.5 million Israelites, the idea that the whole nation of Egypt is just going to get up and stone the entire 2.5 million of the Israelites is this kind of, it's a stretch of the imagination.
I don't know. I mean, if you kept the Jews down for so long, and I mean, I doubt you were giving them swords and weaponry and stuff. So it might seem even, but the Egyptians were probably a lot more equipped, right?
No, but it says they're going to be stoned. How do you stone 2.5 million people?
You're probably gonna stone a couple of them.
How you don't even have that much stone?
They'll stone a couple of them, and nobody wants to be the first.
Who's going to get stoned? Like Moses and Aaron, or the whole people group, or just the council of the Israelites? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they would take like the leaders, the ringleaders, and then stone them. That makes more sense.
Okay, we figured it out.
Yeah, I think we got
proud
that.
of us.
I think you're right.
I mean, they're already living in Goshen, right?
Yeah.
And didn't they move there so that they wouldn't be with the Egyptians, since they needed to sacrifice things that the Egyptians found to be kind of gross or whatever?
Yeah, that was the whole point.
So can't they just do it where they are living right now?
Again, this is another plot hole. The whole reason why they settled in Goshen is so that they would be separate from the other Egyptians and so that their offerings and sacrifices wouldn't be offensive towards the Egyptians because they were segregated.
Mm-hmm.
But well, maybe there's such a big people group now that their territory and the territory of the Egyptians are now overlapping.
Well, how big was Goshen compared to Egypt proper?
I don't actually.
All right, let's find out.
I don't know. Ask ChatGPT.
But I just assumed you would know.
I didn't actually know.
Oh boy! All right, well then.
Just ask like how many square miles is Goshen?
All right, well talk amongst yourselves. All right.
Let's see.
Are you looking at? Oh,
How large? I lived near Goshen, Indiana once. It says the land of Goshen mentioned in the Bible is typically understood to be a region in ancient Egypt where the Israelites settled during their time there. Yes, we know that. Its exact size isn't specified in the historical text, but it is generally described as a fertile. We didn't ask for those details.
That's because you're not saying the right thing.
I asked.
No, you got to write on it. I don't care about any of this crap. Just tell me a number.
I don't care about any of. Tell me how large the area was. This is how ChatGTP works, really? The exact size of the land of Goshen isn't definitely known, but is generally believed to have covered several hundred square miles in the northern Nile Delta region of Egypt. Some estimates suggest it could have been around 1,000 square miles. I gotta admit, that's much larger than I expected.
Well, then what's Egypt looking like?
I have no idea.
Well, let's ask Mr. Computer.
It's big.
But that's what you got to do with the computer, you know?
I don't think that was necessary to the conversation, though.
You have to strong arm him. Well,
I believe that.
if I remember the conversation, it would be.
Well, let's read the last section, 29 to 32.
Then Moses said, "As soon as I leave you, I will pray for the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart tomorrow from Pharaoh, from his officials, and from his people. Only do not let Pharaoh again go falsely by not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord." So Moses went out from Pharaoh.
Wait, can we stop there?
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense. Look what Pharaoh said. Pharaoh said, I will let you go to sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, provided you do not go very far away. So he said, you can go do it.
Yeah.
And then it says, Moses said, as soon as I leave you, I will pray to the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart far from Pharaoh, from him, blah, blah, blah. Only do not let Pharaoh again deal falsely by not letting the people go. But Pharaoh said you can go. What's he talking about?
Who is he talking to?
It says, then Moses said, as soon as I leave you. So Moses is talking to Pharaoh.
Yeah, but why does he say only do not let Pharaoh again?
I know. It says, as soon as I leave you, I will pray to the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart tomorrow from Pharaoh, from his officials, and from his people. That's fine.
Okay.
Only do not let Pharaoh again deal falsely by not letting the people go to sacrifice. So that's weird that he's referring to the Pharaoh as Pharaoh rather than saying
that's right.
You don't.
Right.
And that happens sometimes. But none of that is relevant. I'm trying to figure out how the Pharaoh dealt falsely with them. He said you can go do the thing.
I mean, I assume there's been a couple times where he said it was okay and then I went back on it, right?
But not here. He said you can go into the wilderness to do your thing. Just, don't go too far away.
Well, maybe Moses is expecting him to change his mind.
I'm just saying it doesn't make sense. He's being falsely accused. Hashtag justice for Pharaoh.
Yeah, he's innocent.
I don't know if he's innocent, but like he's
not as bad as they make him out to be.
Yeah,
right?
He's not guilty of anything here.
Right.
Oh well. Sorry. Let's keep reading. I just had to stop there because I was like, that's not what happened. Right.
So Moses went out from Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord did as Moses asked. He removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his officials, and from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also, and would not let the people go.
Not what I wanted.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Big fail. So he almost did the right thing. So I have a theory. What if this passage and the prior passage got confused over time? Because now we get to verse 30, Moses leaves, and then it says the Lord said to remove them. So he prays and they're gone. Then it says Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also, and then would not let the people go, which means maybe this got confused at some point in time because he did renege on the promise.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems to be that Moses knew about it before it happened.
Mm.
Unless he was actually referring to the prior time that it happened in the
Mm.
previous chapter, because it happened once in the previous.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what he was referring to? But if he was referring to what happened last time, it's still weird that he would bring it up because the Pharaoh just said you can go do the thing.
I don't know.
I don't know. It just, the narrative doesn't flow as well as you would expect from an all-knowing God who theoretically dictated it to Moses.
Yeah, right.
I know that's not how it worked. All how it worked.
I mean, I'm not saying the Bible is false, but what I am saying is it's really hard to believe that there are people out there who think it's inerrant.
Yeah, to think that God just dictated it to the individuals.
And it became this.
There's no way
this
that
is how God wanted it.
God dictated this to Moses to write down. There's no way. Moses wrote in third person about himself.
Mm-hmm.
And then called himself the most humble man that ever lived.
Mm-hmm.
That's not happening. Although it's interesting that theoretically he narrated his own death, but that's neither here nor there. What were you had some notes on this?
No, I didn't.
Well, you did, but I'm confused on what they mean.
It was just a little mini play.
Oh, you wrote a little.
I did, yeah.
They were gonna act it out for us.
No.
All right. Oh well. So I mean, so Pharaoh here. What I want to know, it says Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know. Did he really, or did God harden it?
This is like the first time when Pharaoh says he hardened his own heart, right?
Well, yeah, it is kind of. It might not be. Might be the second time.
Maybe the second, yeah.
But like, it's hard to tell where God's hardening and Pharaoh's hardening overlap and where one starts and the other one stops because they just seem to be interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
But despite that fact, we know that the hardening is all part of God. It is not God's plan for a flaccid Pharaoh.
All right. Anyhow,
And show his wonder.
yeah.
Just say no to flaccid.
The hashtag, right?
Start a trend.
No, let's not start that.
Hashtag flaccid Pharaoh. Hashtag Aaron's miraculous rod. We didn't make that up. That's in the Bible.
Wait, yeah, it is. Well, sort of. I mean, the guy who wrote the.
Sure, yeah. The editors.
Yeah.
The redactors.
Yeah.
Any concluding thoughts, Dan?
Well, it's interesting because we always read this to assume that God always hardened his heart. But now they're using it, you said, a little interchangeably. So I kind of want, it's important to know that God did it. Because if Pharaoh did it, then it's a totally different story.
Well, it seems to be a mixture of both. In some passages, it's Pharaoh hardened his heart. In other passages, that God hardened his heart.
So which one is it?
That's what I'm saying. It's like ping pong going back and forth.
But
clearly it's both.
Is it both?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, God is still like to blame. Right?
Yeah, God's still toying with him.
Okay, because I mean, it basically reads like that, and so I
Yeah.
think it would be hard to read it like any other way.
Yeah, and the New Testament recognizes this. Have you read Romans chapter 9?
Do you think I have?
Probably not.
No.
Romans chapter 9 has a really good passage. So, on the topic of salvation, Paul says, "Who are we to say? Is there injustice on God's part?" Referring to the fact that he predestines some and predestines others different ways. He says, "By no means, for he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion." So it depends not on human will or exertion, but on God who shows mercy. For the scriptures say to Pharaoh, I have raised you up for this very purpose, that I may show my power in you, that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth. So then he has mercy on whomever he has mercy, and he hardens the heart of whomever he chooses. So Paul seems to be recognizing the fact too that, like, listen, God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did it so that he could show his mighty wonders and ability to execute babies.
Hey, I have a question, and it's probably very much unrelated, but like just offhanded, how many people Paul killed?
Well, he doesn't really say. I mean, he was at the execution of Stephen. They put the coats at his feet, so he was there. Whether or not he participated, I don't know. He rounded up the Christians with murder on his breath, but I don't know if it explicitly says he did the murdering. But he says in Acts 22 that he got papers from the council to go and round them up. But it seems to be that even if he wasn't doing the killing, which he probably wasn't, the purpose was to round them up to have them killed.
Yeah, I mean, Charles Manson didn't kill anyone, right?
Charles Manson? Well, not well. I mean, he had other people do the killing for him.
Right. But we put him in prison.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so we would say that Paul did do the killing. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, he'd be a ringleader and co-conspirator. Call him.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you put somebody up to doing the murder, whether you did it or they did it, you're in a lot of trouble.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, theoretically, Paul is a murderer.
So just
Says he's a murderer.
give me like a number.
Well, how many? I don't know. He doesn't say.
Just guess.
He said he was a great persecutor of the church.
Mm.
I don't know how many.
I just have a hard time, really listening to him.
Paul?
Yeah, since
Paul's tough. Listen, I if you're going to be really into reading the New Testament, I think we should focus way more on the words of Jesus, way less on the words of Paul.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, it's not that I dislike Paul. It's just that he seems to be preaching a different gospel than what Jesus.
Oh yeah.
And he seems to be just a little bit out of his mind. Like, he's really aggressive.
He seems to be okay with all the bad things he did, but not with what other people are doing.
Well, he's remorseful for it. Like, if you read his letters, he says that he would be least among the people to be deserving of God's grace because of his behavior prior. So, like, he recognizes that his prior behavior was problematic, obviously, but still, like, there's a lot of big questions because, like, in the last thing, it's 8:30 now, we have to close it up, but on Acts chapter 15, remember, there's a big council because they're like, what do we do with all these Gentiles converting to the faith? Surely they shouldn't have to get circumcised and follow the law. And they come out and said, listen, it seems fit to the Holy Spirit and to us that the whole of the law not be placed upon them, but they only have to follow these 4 statutes. And you can't eat meat with the blood in it. You can't eat meat sacrificed to idols. Then there was 2 other laws, and I forget what they are. But okay, that's fine. But then, literally, just I don't know, a couple months later or a year later, I don't know, whenever he started his second missionary journey, and he founds the church in Corinth. And then later he writes a letter to the church in Corinth and telling them that it's okay to eat meat sacrificed to idols. But that literally can't be true because you just had a meeting with all the apostles and you agreed with each other that the Gentiles shouldn't be eating meat sacrificed to idols. So Paul, to me, is just kind of he's not all together, man. And the book of James seems to be clearly written as a dialogue against Paul. Book of James is directly contradicting Paul's theology.
Hmm.
Does it say even demons believe, but even
And-
demons have faith?
And Paul wrote a lot of the New Testament.
Well, yeah, Paul wrote it.
That would be a lot to just take out.
Yeah, and that's why it's very difficult to be like a biblical inerrantist, because you see within the New Testament itself, there is some clashing of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Because even Jesus never said that, you're saved by faith alone. Every time Jesus ever talked about salvation or about going to heaven or hell, it was always about whether or not you followed the commandments, whether or not you were taking care of the poor and the widows and the needy. Jesus' salvation in the Gospels was nearly always some level of your righteousness needs to exceed even that of the Pharisees. It wasn't about, hey, if you believe the right thing, you'll go to heaven. Paul's the one who invented that notion.
Really?
Yeah. Which is why James, if James was the brother, you can see why James would push back on. You show me your faith and I'll show you my works.
Yeah, I like that.
Faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
Because even the demons believe, but obviously, what good is it to just believe it? Useless. The salvation should never. You should never think that somebody's merely saved just because they were convinced of something. Why does that merit salvation? It doesn't. No merit. Now I know Paul would say, obviously, you can't merit your own salvation because then you could boast about your own merit. That whole rationale is silly. It falls apart because then you're just saying that God is just letting anybody into heaven just because they were convinced of a claim. And like people who do live righteous lives, who just don't believe the same thing, or they understand the scriptures slightly differently, God's going to send them to hell because they didn't come to the right conclusion. And the Catholics don't have this problem. This is clearly a Protestant Pauline issue. Catholics have a holistic view. Same with like your wife, the universalist. Anyways, that's a lot. I think we're done.
Yep.
Guys, thanks for being here. We appreciate you. We'll be back again in another week for Exodus chapter 9. And how long is chapter 9? Is it a short or a long chapter?
One of them was.
It's a long one.
Oh, great.
35 verses. So
well, then chapter
be quite
9 and not chapter 10.
Well, yeah, we'll be hitting the 5th, 6th, and 7th plagues next week.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, we're getting to the really fun ones now, where the animals die multiple times.
Oh, okay.
You're not aware of this one yet?
They're resurrected so they can die again?
The cattle die like 3 times.
See, that sounds wrong.
Oh, dude, out of the people who really get the worst out of these plagues are the Egyptians and the cattle. The cattle get devastated.
That's sad.
Which is wild because after the 10th plague, the Egyptians are giving the Hebrews a bunch of cattle to go on their way. Which is, I thought they were all dead.
Yeah, I'd be like, can you please check those, make sure they're not diseased?
They're definitely diseased. Yeah. Hey guys, thanks for being here. I hope you have a great night, and we'll see you in 1 week.